Elena Vasquez straightened her uniform as she walked through the massive corridors of the Confederation Capital Station. The gleaming walls stretched high above her head, covered in symbols from dozens of alien species. She had been humanity's ambassador for 3 years now, but the size of this place still made her feel small. Today was important. The Galactic Council was meeting to discuss humanity's role in the galaxy. Elena hoped they might finally give humans better territory or more advanced technology. After 50 years in the Confederation, humanity was still treated like children. The council chamber was enormous. 3 groups dominated the center of the room, each representing one of the galaxy's most powerful species. Elena took her seat in the back with the other junior species representatives. The Zephyrians spoke first. They looked like beings made of pure light, shifting and glowing as they moved. Their leader's voice echoed strangely, as if coming from everywhere at once. The humans continue to occupy valuable space in the outer rim, the Zephyrian said. Their primitive methods waste resources that could be better used by more advanced species. Elena bit her tongue. The valuable space was a collection of dead rocks and failing star systems that nobody else wanted. Next came the Krillian Empire representative. The Krillians looked almost human, but taller and stronger, with silver skin that seemed to glow. They were known throughout the galaxy for their warrior culture and psychic powers. The human military is laughable, the Krillian commander said with a sneer. They still use projectile weapons and chemical explosives. Their soldiers have no psychic abilities and their tactics are chaotic. They could not defend themselves against a single Krillian battle group. The other council members made sounds of agreement. Elena's hands clenched into fists under the table. Finally, the ethereal collective spoke. They had no physical bodies anymore, existing as pure consciousness in floating crystal formations. Their mental voice touched everyone's mind at once. The humans are young, the ethereal said, its thoughts feeling ancient and tired. They have potential, but they need guidance. Perhaps in another 1,000 years they will be ready to contribute meaningfully to galactic civilization. Until then, they should remain in their assigned sectors and learn from their betters. Elena stood up slowly. The entire chamber turned to look at her. She could feel the weight of hundreds of alien gazes. With respect, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Humanity has been part of this confederation for 50 years. We've followed every rule, paid every tax, and sent our best people to serve. Yet we're still treated like we just crawled out of caves. The Zephyrian's light pulsed brighter. Because compared to us, you have. We have manipulated matter and energy for millions of years. We can reshape planets with a thought. What can your species do? We survive, Elena said simply. We adapt. We solve problems that others can't. The Krillian commander laughed, a harsh sound. Your problem-solving consists of throwing more bodies at a situation until something works. That is not strategy. That is desperation. Sometimes desperation is what wins wars, Elena replied. Wars? The ethereal's mental voice carried amusement. Child species, you have never faced a real war. The conflicts you call wars are small disagreements compared to the battles we have fought. When real danger comes to this galaxy, you will hide behind your betters and let us protect you. Elena wanted to argue more, but she knew it was useless. The 3 elder species had made up their minds long ago. Humanity would remain in the outer rim, treated as a curiosity at best and a nuisance at worst. As the council meeting continued, Elena barely listened to the discussions of trade routes and territory disputes. Her mind was elsewhere, thinking about the message she had received that morning from Earth's intelligence services. The message had been brief but troubling. Long-range sensors had detected something approaching from outside the galaxy. Something big. The data was still being analyzed, but early reports suggested a massive fleet of unknown vessels moving at incredible speed toward their galaxy. Elena had tried to bring this up with the Council's Intelligence Committee, but they had dismissed her concerns. "Human sensors are primitive," they had said. "You are probably detecting cosmic debris or a natural phenomenon." But Elena knew better. Humanity's sensors might be less advanced than the elder species, but they were designed differently. Human. Technology was built to expect the unexpected, to detect threats that others might miss. After the council session ended, Elena made her way to the communications center. She needed to send a message to Earth, but it had to be carefully worded. The elder species monitored all communications from junior species members. She typed her message using a code that only Earth's government would understand. "Family gathering going well. Uncle Z still thinks he knows best about the farm. Cousin K keeps bragging about his strength. Grandpa E gives lots of advice but never helps with actual work. Weather reports suggest a big storm coming from the north. Might want to check the roof and secure the livestock. We'll keep you updated. Love, Elena." To anyone else, it would look like a personal message to family, but Earth's intelligence services would understand. The big storm from the north was the unknown fleet. Check the roof and secure the livestock was code for prepare defenses and protect our people. Elena sent the message and returned to her quarters. Her room was small and plain compared to the elaborate suites given to the elder species representatives. The walls were bare metal, and she had only basic furniture. She sat at her desk and opened her personal files. Over the past 3 years, she had been quietly collecting information about the galaxy's power structure. She knew which species controlled which resources, which trade routes were most important, and which worlds had strategic value. More importantly, she had been studying the elder species themselves. Their strengths were obvious and well known, but Elena had also noticed their weaknesses. The Zephyrians were incredibly powerful, but they were also arrogant. They assumed their energy-based abilities could solve any problem. They rarely considered that some challenges might require different approaches. The Krillians were fierce warriors with impressive psychic powers, but their culture was rigid. They followed ancient codes of honor and conduct that made them predictable. They also looked down on any fighting style that didn't match their own. The Ethereals were wise and ancient, but they had become detached from physical reality. They saw everything as a long-term problem to be solved through patience and contemplation. They struggled with situations that required quick, decisive action. Elena closed her files and looked out her small window at the stars. Somewhere out there, something was coming toward their galaxy. The elder species were confident that their combined might could handle any threat. They had ruled the galaxy for so long that they couldn't imagine anything challenging their power. But Elena remembered her history lessons from Earth. Throughout human history, established powers had often fallen to unexpected threats. The key was not always having the strongest weapons or the most advanced technology. Sometimes it was about being willing to do what others wouldn't, about adapting when others couldn't, about fighting when others had given up. Elena opened her communication terminal again and sent another coded message to Earth. Storm definitely coming. Neighbors seem unprepared. Might be time to check our own supplies and make sure we're ready to help if needed. Trust your instincts over local weather reports. She hoped she was wrong about the approaching threat. She hoped the elder species were right and humanity would never need to prove itself in a real crisis. But deep down, Elena had a feeling that everything was about to change. The galaxy had been peaceful for too long. The elder species had grown comfortable in their superiority, and in Elena's experience, comfortable powers were often the most vulnerable when real challenges arrived. She just hoped that when the time came, humanity would be ready to show the galaxy what they were really capable of. 6 months after Elena's warning, the first reports came in from the galaxy's edge. Long-range scouts had made contact with the unknown fleet. The news sent shockwaves through the Confederation. The fleet was massive beyond imagination. Thousands of ships, each one the size of a small moon. They moved in perfect formation, consuming everything in their path. Planets, space stations, even entire star systems simply vanished as the fleet passed through. The Confederation leadership called an emergency session. Elena sat in her usual spot in the back, watching as the elder species debated their response. These creatures call themselves the Devourers, the Zephyrian High Counselor announced. They appear to be a mechanical species of some kind. Their technology is unknown, but surely it cannot match our own. The Krillian War Marshal stood up, his psychic aura radiating confidence. My fleets are already moving to intercept them. These Devourers will learn what happens when they threaten the Krillian Empire. The ethereal collective's mental voice filled the chamber. We sense great hunger from these beings. They seek resources, perhaps. We should attempt communication before resorting to violence. Elena wanted to speak up, to suggest that humanity might be able to help, but she knew it would be useless. The elder species had already decided how to handle the threat. The first battle took place at the Rigel system, on the galaxy's outer edge. The Zephyrians sent their most powerful battle fleet. Elena watched the live feeds from the Confederation War Room, along with hundreds of other junior species representatives. The Zephyrian ships were beautiful and terrifying. They glowed with inner light, their energy weapons capable of destroying planets. As they approached the Devourer fleet, the Zephyrians unleashed their most devastating attack. Matter disruption beams lanced out from the Zephyrian ships. These weapons could break down any known material at the atomic level. They had never failed against any enemy the Zephyrians had faced. The beams struck the Devourer ships and passed right through them, as if the enemy vessels weren't really there. Elena heard gasps from around the war room. The Zephyrian commander's voice crackled over the communications system. Impossible! Our weapons had no effect. The enemy ships seemed to exist in some kind of alternate state. The Devourer ships responded by simply moving forward. They didn't fire weapons or make any aggressive moves. They just continued their advance. And as they passed through the Zephyrian fleet, the energy being's ships began to dissolve. "They're absorbing our energy!" the Zephyrian commander screamed. "All ships, retreat! Retreat!" But it was too late. Within minutes, the entire Zephyrian battle fleet was gone. Consumed. Not destroyed, but somehow integrated into the Devourer ships, which now glowed slightly brighter than before. The war room fell silent. Elena could see the shock on every face around her. The Zephyrians had just lost their most powerful fleet without landing a single hit on the enemy. 3 days later, the Krillian Empire made their attempt. War Marshal Thorak led a massive psychic assault, combining the mental powers of their greatest warriors. The Krillians were famous throughout the galaxy for their ability to crush enemy minds and turn their own weapons against them. Elena watched as thousands of Krillian ships surrounded a Devourer scout group. The psychic attack began, a wave of mental force that should have overwhelmed any thinking being. Instead, the Devourers seemed to welcome the attack. Their ships began to pulse with new patterns of light, and suddenly the Krillian warriors were screaming in pain. "They're using our own psychic energy against us." Thorak's voice was filled with disbelief. "The enemy is learning from our attacks, growing stronger." The Devourer ships moved through the Krillian fleet like sharks through a school of fish. Each ship they consumed made them more organized, more coordinated. The Krillians' greatest strength had become their weakness. Elena felt a chill run down her spine as she watched the second elder species fail completely. The ethereal collective tried a different approach. They sent no weapons, no fleets. Instead, they projected their consciousness directly toward the Devourer fleet, attempting peaceful communication. "We come in peace," the ethereals broadcasted across all frequencies. "We seek understanding. What do you need? What do you want?" Perhaps we can find a solution that benefits both our peoples. The Devourer's response was swift and terrifying. Somehow, they managed to trap several ethereal consciousness forms in crystalline structures that appeared on their ships. The ancient beings who had transcended physical form thousands of years ago were suddenly prisoners in crystal cages. The remaining ethereals retreated in panic, their mental voices filled with fear for the first time in Elena's memory. Within 3 weeks, the outer systems were gone. Entire civilizations that had existed for thousands of years simply vanished. The Devourers didn't just destroy things. They consumed them, learned from them, and became stronger. Elena found herself in the Confederation War Room more often now. The junior species representatives were no longer ignored. With the elder species in retreat, everyone was looking for new ideas. "We need to evacuate the core worlds," the Zephyrian High Counselor said. His light seemed dimmer now, flickering with uncertainty. "Perhaps we can establish a new civilization beyond this galaxy. Running away is not an option." "War Marshal," Thorak growled. "The Krillian Empire does not flee from any enemy." "Your empire just lost half its fleets," the Ethereal Collective replied coldly. "Perhaps it is time to consider alternatives to your warrior pride." Elena stood up slowly. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. "What if we fight them differently?" she asked. The Zephyrian's light pulsed with irritation. "Child species? Your primitive weapons would be even less effective than ours. These creatures absorbed our energy attacks and turned our psychic powers against us. What could your ballistic weapons possibly accomplish?" "Maybe nothing," Elena admitted. "But maybe that's exactly why they might work." The Krillian War Marshal laughed bitterly. "Human logic, always backwards." Elena ignored the insult. "Every attack you've made has been absorbed and used against you. Your energy weapons made them stronger. Your psychic attacks taught them new tricks. What if we use something they can't absorb?" "Such as?" the Ethereal Collective asked. Elena took a deep breath. "Simple physics, kinetic energy, chemical explosives, things that work the same way no matter what kind of exotic technology you're facing." The war room erupted in laughter from some species and angry protests from others. But Elena noticed that a few representatives weren't laughing. They were thinking. "The human makes an interesting point," said Ambassador Crix of the Altarian Republic. "Perhaps we have been approaching this problem with too much sophistication." "Sophistication is what separates us from barbarians," the Zephyrian snapped. "Right now, the barbarians are the only ones who haven't lost entire fleets," Elena replied calmly. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency broadcasts filled the communication systems. "All Confederation forces, this is Admiral Voss of the 3rd Defense Fleet. The Devourer main force has broken through our lines at the Centauri cluster. They're heading directly for the core. Worlds. Estimated arrival, 72 hours. Elena felt her blood turn to ice. The Devourers were no longer just a distant threat. They were coming for the heart of Confederation space. The Zephyrian High Counselor's light dimmed to barely a glow. 72 hours to evacuate billions of beings? It's impossible. "We're not evacuating," Elena said firmly. "We're fighting." "With what?" War Marshal Thorak demanded. "Our most powerful weapons are useless against them." Elena smiled grimly. "With something they won't expect. Something they can't absorb or learn from because it's too simple and stupid to understand." She opened her communication device and sent a message using the same family code she had used months ago. "Storm has arrived early. Time to show the neighbors what the family farm is really capable of. Bring everything. Time to work." As chaos erupted around her in the war room, Elena felt a strange calm settle over her. For months, the elder species had dismissed humanity as primitive and weak. They were about to learn that sometimes primitive was exactly what you needed. The message to Earth was simple, but Elena knew it would be understood. Humanity had been preparing for this moment, not because they had predicted the Devourers, but because they had never truly trusted their place in the galaxy. Now it was time to see if their preparations had been enough. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the human flagship, defiant, watching the tactical display with calm eyes. Around her, the largest fleet in human history waited for her orders. Ships stretched as far as the sensors could detect, but these weren't the handful of outdated vessels the Confederation had assigned to humanity. "Admiral, we're receiving panicked transmissions from the Confederation capital," her communications officer reported. "They're begging us to evacuate our people from the core worlds." Sarah smiled grimly. "Tell them we're not evacuating, we're hunting." The truth was something the elder species had never suspected. For 50 years, humanity had been building ships in secret, not just a few hidden vessels, but an entire war machine. While the Zephyrians perfected their energy weapons and the Krillians trained their psychic warriors, humans had been doing what they did best, preparing for the worst. "Ma'am, Devourer fleet detected at the edge of the Vega system," the sensor operator announced. "They're consuming the mining stations there." "Perfect," Sarah said. "All ships prepare for quantum jump. Target coordinates, Vega system, intercept." Formation. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the fleet's chief scientist, looked up from her portable laboratory station. "Admiral, are you sure about this? We've only tested the quantum torpedoes in simulations." "Sometimes you have to jump off the cliff to learn." "If you can fly," Sarah replied. "Besides, our simulations are based on solid theory. Unlike our galactic neighbors, we don't assume we know everything." The human fleet made the jump to quantum space and emerged at the edge of the Vega system. What they saw made even the veteran human crews pause in amazement. The Devourer ships were enormous, each one a twisted mass of metal and energy that seemed to shift and change as they watched. They moved through space like living things, consuming everything in their path. Entire space stations simply vanished as the creatures absorbed them. "My God," whispered the tactical officer. "No wonder the elder species couldn't fight them. They're not just ships. They're like space-born whales." "Whales can be hunted," Sarah said calmly. "Communications, open a channel to all ships. Time to show these things what human ingenuity looks like." Sarah's voice reached every human ship in the fleet. "All vessels, this is Admiral Chen. For 50 years, we've been told we're too primitive to matter in this galaxy. Too young, too weak, too stupid to understand how things really work. Today, we prove them wrong." The Devourer fleet had noticed the human ships and was turning toward them. The alien vessels moved with disturbing grace, their surfaces rippling, like water. "The enemy is trying to scan our ships," Dr. Tanaka reported. "They're attempting to analyze our technology the same way they did with the elder species." "Let them look," Sarah said. "They won't understand what they're seeing until it's too late. All ships, weapons free. Show them what good old-fashioned human stubbornness looks like." The human fleet opened fire, but not with energy weapons or psychic attacks. Instead, thousands of quantum torpedoes streaked toward the Devourer ships. These weren't conventional weapons. They were Dr. Tanaka's masterpiece, designed specifically to fight an enemy that existed partially outside normal space-time. The torpedoes struck the Devourer ships, and something incredible happened. The alien vessels, which had seemed invulnerable to every attack the elder species had tried, suddenly solidified. Their shifting ethereal forms became solid matter. "It's working!" Dr. Tanaka shouted. "The quantum collapse effect is forcing them into normal space." Now that the Devourers were solid, the human fleet unleashed everything they had. Kinetic weapons that fired chunks of metal at incredible speeds. Chemical explosives that relied on simple physics. Viral programs designed to corrupt any computer system they encountered. The Devourers tried to absorb the attacks the way they had with the elder species, but human weapons didn't work that way. There was nothing elegant to absorb, no sophisticated energy to redirect. Just brute force and explosive chemistry. Direct hit on the lead vessel, the weapons officer reported. Their hull is breaching. Sarah watched with satisfaction as the first Devourer ship came apart under the human bombardment, but she also noticed something else. They're learning, she said quietly. Look at how the other ships are moving. They're adapting to our tactics faster than expected. She was right. The surviving Devourer ships had already begun changing their formation, trying to minimize the damage from human weapons. But Sarah had expected this. Phase 2, she announced. All Marines, prepare for boarding operations. This order shocked even her own crew. The tactical officer turned to stare at her. Ma'am, you want to board their ships? That's suicide. No, Sarah said calmly. That's human. Communications. Patch me through to Marine Commander Rodriguez. Commander Maria Rodriguez appeared on the main screen, her powered armor already sealed and ready for combat. Behind her, Sarah could see hundreds of human Marines preparing for what everyone else in the galaxy would consider an insane mission. Commander, you know the mission, Sarah said. We need samples of their quantum cores. We need to understand how they work. Maria grinned fiercely. Understood, Admiral. My people are ready to get up close and personal with these things. Remember, Marines, this isn't about glory or honor, Sarah continued. This is about survival. These creatures are running from something even worse, and we need to know what that is. The Marine assault ships launched from the human fleet, moving toward the disabled Devourer vessels. Unlike the elder species, who preferred long-range combat, humans had always been willing to get their hands dirty. The boarding operation was brutal. The inside of Devourer ships was like nothing the Marines had ever seen. Corridors that twisted through impossible geometries, rooms that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, and defensive systems that attacked the mind as much as the body. But human Marines had trained for urban warfare, tunnel fighting, and close-quarters combat in every environment imaginable. They adapted quickly, using teamwork and aggressive tactics to push deeper into the alien ships. This is Rodriguez, the commander's voice crackled over the communication system. We've reached what looks like a central control room. There's some kind of crystalline structure here that's pulsing with energy. That's their quantum core, Dr. Tanaka said excitedly. If we can capture one intact, we might be able to understand their technology. The battle continued for hours. Human ships darted in and out of the Devourer formation, using hit-and-run tactics that the aliens couldn't counter. More importantly, human crews were actually capturing pieces of enemy technology. But as the fight went on, Sarah began to understand something troubling. The Devourers weren't just attacking randomly. They were desperate. Their movements, their tactics, everything about them suggested creatures running from something terrible. Admiral, Dr. Tanaka called out, I'm getting some strange readings from the captured quantum core. It's not just a control system. It's some kind of memory storage device. Can you access it? I'm trying, but the data is encoded in quantum states I've never seen before. Wait, I'm getting something. The main screen flickered and suddenly filled with images that made everyone on the bridge fall silent. They saw a galaxy being consumed by something far worse than the Devourers. A spreading darkness that didn't just destroy matter and energy, but erased the very possibility of existence. My God, Sarah whispered. They're not invaders. They're refugees. The communication system crackled to life with a voice that sounded like grinding metal and screaming wind. It was the first time anyone had heard a Devourer speak. You hurt us, but you also understand. The silence comes. It consumes all. We flee, but nowhere is safe. Soon, your galaxy dies too. Sarah stared at the screen for a long moment, then made a decision that would change everything. Open a channel to the Confederation capital, she ordered. All ships, cease fire and maintain defensive positions. Her communications officer looked confused. Ma'am, we have them on the run, Shouldn't we press our advantage? Sarah shook her head. No. We just learned something the elder species never bothered to find out. Sometimes the monster you're fighting isn't your real enemy. As reports of the human victory spread throughout the galaxy, Sarah began planning for something much more difficult than winning a battle. She was planning for a war against something that could erase entire galaxies from existence. The elder species had been right about one thing. Humanity was too young and primitive to understand the galaxy's true dangers. But they had been wrong about something else. Sometimes being young and primitive was exactly what you needed to find new solutions to impossible problems. Dr. Marcus Webb had always been fascinated by the minds of alien species. As humanity's leading xenopsychologist, he had spent years studying how different beings thought and communicated. But nothing had prepared him for his current assignment: talking to a captured devourer Queen Node. The creature sat in a specially designed containment cell deep within the human research station. It looked like a massive crystal spider made of dark metal and pulsing energy. When it spoke, its voice sounded like the death of stars. "You are curious beings," the Queen Node said, its thoughts translating slowly into human language. "The others who came before you, they attacked with pride. You attack with questions." Marcus leaned forward in his chair, careful to keep his movements slow and non-threatening. "We want to understand. Your people are running from something. What is the silence?" The Queen Node's energy patterns shifted, and Marcus felt a wave of ancient terror wash over him. Even through the containment field, the creature's fear was overwhelming. "The silence is ending," the Queen Node said. "Not death. Death leaves something behind. The silence leaves nothing. No matter, no energy, no possibility that anything ever existed. It spreads from galaxy to galaxy, erasing all." Marcus felt his blood turn cold. "How do you fight something like that?" "You do not fight the silence," the Queen Node replied. "You flee. Always flee. But there is nowhere to flee to. It follows. It spreads. Eventually, everything becomes nothing." Meanwhile, in another part of the research station, Admiral Chen was meeting with representatives from the elder species. For the first time since humanity had joined the Confederation, the Zephyrians, Krillians, and Ethereals were asking humans for help. "Your weapons were effective against the Devourers," the Zephyrian High Counselor admitted. His light seemed dimmer than usual, flickering with uncertainty. "We request access to this quantum technology." Admiral Chen studied the three representatives carefully. These beings had ruled the galaxy for millions of years, and now they were reduced to begging a primitive species for help. "The technology isn't the real issue," Chen said calmly. "The problem is what's coming next. The Devourers were just the beginning." "Explain," the Krillian War Marshal demanded, though his usual arrogance was notably absent. Chen activated a holographic display showing the data they had extracted from captured Devourer ships. The silence. It's not just a weapon or an enemy fleet. It's an entropic force that erases reality itself. The Devourers have been running from it for centuries, consuming resources to build quantum barriers that might protect them. The ethereal. Collective's mental voice was filled with disbelief. "Impossible. Nothing can erase the fundamental forces of existence." "Tell that to the 17 galaxies that no longer exist," Chen replied grimly. "According to the Devourer data, the silence has already consumed entire galactic clusters, and it's heading this way." The war room fell silent as the implications sank in. The elder species had spent so much time fighting the Devourers that they hadn't considered what might be chasing them. "How long do we have?" the Zephyrian asked, quietly. Chen checked her data pad. "Based on the silence's current expansion rate, it will reach the edge of our galaxy in approximately 8 months. War Marshal Thorax slammed his fist on the table. 8 months to prepare for a threat that can erase galaxies? It's impossible. Maybe, Chen agreed. But impossible has never stopped humans before. Over the following weeks, humanity began, the largest mobilization in their history. But they weren't just building weapons. They were rebuilding their entire understanding of reality. Dr. Tanaka had been working around the clock with captured devourer technology, trying to understand how quantum barriers might work against an entropic force. Her laboratory had become a maze of experimental equipment and theoretical calculations. The problem, she explained to Chen during one of their daily briefings, is that the silence doesn't attack matter or energy directly. It attacks the mathematical constants that make existence possible. If we can't anchor reality itself, nothing else matters. Can it be done? Chen asked. Tanaka was quiet for a long moment. Theoretically, yes. We'd need to build what I'm calling an existence engine, a device that could reinforce the quantum foundations of space-time itself. But the power requirements would be enormous. We'd need the resources of the entire galaxy. And someone would have to control it, Chen said, understanding immediately. Someone would have to make the decisions about what gets saved and what gets sacrificed. Tanaka nodded grimly. The mind interfacing with the existence engine would have to process information from across the galaxy simultaneously. They'd experience every death, every moment of terror, every impossible choice. It would age them decades in hours. Chen was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Could a human mind handle it?" "I don't know," Tanaka admitted. "But human minds are more adaptable than the elder species. We're used to chaos, uncertainty, and making quick decisions with incomplete information." Meanwhile, the political situation in the Confederation was rapidly changing. The junior species that had been ignored for centuries were suddenly being consulted on major decisions. The elder species' authority was crumbling as more beings realized that their ancient power meant nothing against the approaching threat. Elena Vasquez found herself promoted from human ambassador to supreme Confederation representative, a position that had never existed before but was desperately needed now. "The old power structure is dead," she announced during an emergency council session. "We're facing extinction as a galaxy, not as individual species. From now on, every decision will be made based on what gives us the best chance of survival." Some of the elder species protested, but their objections were quickly overruled by the junior species, who had finally found their voice. Elena continued, "Humanity will lead the technical development of our defense systems, but we'll need every species to contribute. The Zephyrians' energy manipulation abilities, the Krillians' organizational skills, the Ethereals' long-term planning, everything." "And if we refuse?" the Zephyrian High Counselor asked coldly. Elena's smile was sharp as a blade. "Then you'll face the silence alone. And we've all seen how well your individual approaches work against impossible threats." As the months passed, the galaxy transformed. Ancient prejudices were set aside as species that had been enemies for millennia worked together. Human engineers worked alongside Zephyrian energy masters. Krillian tacticians learned from human chaos theory. Ethereal philosophers helped design quantum mathematics that could anchor reality itself. But as the existence engine took shape, everyone knew that someone would have to sacrifice themselves to operate it. The person who interfaced with the device would bear the mental burden of protecting an entire galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison had volunteered for the position. A former mining engineer turned quantum theorist, he had the right combination of technical knowledge and mental flexibility. More importantly, he understood the cost. "I know what this means," he told Admiral Chen during his final briefing. "I know I probably won't survive it, and if I do, I won't be the same person. But someone has to do it." Chen studied the young man carefully. "Why you?" Morrison smiled sadly. "Because someone has to stand up when the universe asks, who will take responsibility? And humans have always been good at volunteering for impossible jobs." As the silence approached the galaxy's edge, consuming star systems and leaving empty, void behind. The greatest collaboration in galactic history prepared for its ultimate test. The existence engine was ready. The quantum barriers were in place, and Captain Morrison was prepared to sacrifice his mind and soul to save everyone else. The elder species, who had once dismissed humanity as primitive, were about to learn what true power looked like. It wasn't about having the biggest weapons or the most advanced technology. It was about being willing to bear the unbearable burden so others could survive. The silence was coming, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy what responsibility really meant. Captain Jake Morrison stood before the existence engine, his hands trembling as he prepared to interface with the most powerful device ever built. The massive machine stretched for kilometers in all directions, a fusion of technology from every species in the galaxy. Quantum processors hummed alongside Zephyrian energy cores, while Krillian psychic amplifiers worked in harmony with ethereal consciousness matrices. Around the control center, representatives from hundreds of species watched in silence. The galaxy's greatest minds, beings who had ruled civilizations for millions of years, now looked to a human mining engineer for salvation. Admiral Chen placed a hand on Morrison's shoulder. "Jake, you don't have to do this. We could find another way." Morrison smiled, though his face was pale with fear. "No, we can't. And we both know it." He looked around at the gathered aliens. "For 50 years, they've told us we were too young, too primitive to understand the galaxy." Maybe they were right, but sometimes being young and stupid is exactly what you need. Through the observation windows, they could see the approaching silence. It wasn't a fleet or an army. It was nothingness itself, a spreading void that erased everything it touched. Entire star systems simply stopped existing as the entropic wave passed through them. "Silence Front will reach the outer colonies in 6 hours," Dr. Tanaka reported from her monitoring station. "The quantum barriers are holding, but they won't last long without active reinforcement." Morrison nodded and stepped up to the interface. Chair. The moment he sat down, thousands of neural connections activated, linking his consciousness directly to the existence engine. The sensation was overwhelming. Suddenly, he could feel every living being in the galaxy, sense every planet, every star, every particle of matter. "Jake, can you hear me?" Chen's voice seemed to come from very far away. "I can hear everything," Morrison whispered, his voice filled with wonder and terror. "Every thought, every heartbeat, every moment of fear across the galaxy. It's beautiful and horrible at the same time." The silence struck the outer quantum barriers with the force of universal entropy. Morrison screamed as he felt reality itself being attacked. Through the existence engine, he could sense the mathematical constants that held existence together beginning to waver. "Jake, you need to focus," Dr. Tanaka called out. "Use the engine to reinforce the quantum foundations." Morrison gritted his teeth and reached out with his consciousness, using the engine to strengthen the barriers between existence and void. But the silence was stronger than they had imagined. It didn't just attack, it adapted, finding weak points in reality and exploiting them. "I can't hold it all," Morrison gasped, blood trickling from his nose as his mind stretched across galactic distances. "There are too many variables, too many systems to protect." Elena Vasquez stepped forward. "Then don't protect everything. Save what you can." Morrison's eyes snapped open, and Elena saw that they were now glowing with quantum energy. "You're asking me to choose, to decide who lives and who dies." "Yes," Elena said simply, "because someone has to make that choice, and it might as well be us." What followed was the most difficult 72 hours in galactic history. Morrison, his consciousness spread across the galaxy through the existence engine, made impossible decisions every second. When the silence threatened to break, Through near-the-core worlds, he sacrificed entire outer rim systems to reinforce the barriers. When ancient cultural centers were at risk, he chose to save young colonies with greater potential for growth. The elder species watched in horror as Morrison made choices they could never have made. When the Krillian homeworld came under threat, he saved it by redirecting the attack toward uninhabited systems. When the Zephyrian energy collectives were at risk, he preserved them by sacrificing ancient monuments that had stood for millions of years. "He's treating the galaxy like a chessboard," the ethereal collective observed, their mental voice filled with disturbed fascination. "Calculating not just immediate survival, but long-term potential." "He's thinking like a human," Admiral Chen replied grimly. "Making the hard choices because they need to be made." Morrison aged years in hours. His hair turned white, lines appeared on his face, and his body began to fail under the strain. But he never stopped. When psychic feedback from dying civilizations threatened to overwhelm him, he absorbed the pain and kept working. When the silence found new ways to attack reality, he adapted faster than it could spread. The turning point came when Morrison realized something the elder species had missed. The silence wasn't just random entropy. It was following patterns, consuming realities in a specific order based on their quantum signatures. "It's not mindless," he announced, his voice echoing strangely as it was amplified by the engine. "The silence is intelligent. It's learning from each galaxy it consumes, becoming more efficient." Dr. Tanaka's instruments went wild as Morrison began implementing a new strategy. Instead of just defending against the silence, he started feeding it false quantum signatures, fake realities that would lead it away from populated systems and into empty void. "Brilliant," she whispered. "He's not just fighting it, he's tricking it." The battle turned into a deadly game of quantum chess. Morrison created decoy galaxies made of pure mathematics, false star systems that existed only as possibility, phantom civilizations that the silence would waste time trying to erase. While the entropic force consumed these illusions, Morrison used the breathing room to reinforce the real galaxy's defenses. But the strategy came at a cost. Creating false realities required Morrison to sacrifice pieces of his own consciousness, feeding parts of his mind to the engine to maintain the deception. "Jake, your neural patterns are becoming unstable," Chen called out. "You need to pull back." "Can't," Morrison replied, his voice now sounding distant and strange. "If I stop now, it'll see through the deceptions. Just a little longer." The final phase of the battle was beyond human comprehension. Morrison, his consciousness now more quantum energy than human thought, engaged the silence in direct mental combat. He fought entropy itself across multiple dimensions, using pure willpower and human stubbornness to hold reality together. When it was over, the silence retreated to the void between galaxies, confused and weakened by its encounter with Morrison's deceptions. The galaxy was saved, though scarred and reduced from its former glory. Morrison collapsed in the interface chair, his body broken, but his eyes still glowing with residual quantum energy. He looked around at the gathered representatives with the expression of someone who had seen the birth and death of universes. "It's done," he whispered. "The galaxy is safe. For now." Elena knelt beside him. "Jake, you did it. You saved everyone." Morrison smiled weakly. "I didn't save everyone. I chose who to save." That's what power really is. Not the ability to protect everything, but the willingness to make impossible choices so others don't have to. In the months that followed, the galaxy began to rebuild. But the power structure had fundamentally changed. The elder species still existed, but they were no longer the unquestioned rulers. Humanity had proven that strength wasn't about age or technology, it was about responsibility. Elena found herself leading the new Galactic Council, with representatives from every species working together as equals. The old hierarchy based on Power and dominance was gone, replaced by a system based on cooperation and shared burden. Morrison survived, though he was forever changed by his experience. His consciousness still held traces of quantum energy, and he could sense things across galactic distances. He became humanity's first quantum guardian, watching for signs that the silence might return. Years later, Elena would teach human children about the war against the silence. When a student asked why humans had to be the ones to save everyone, Elena's answer became legendary throughout the galaxy. Because when the universe asks, "Who will stand up?" someone has to answer, "We will." That's not power, that's responsibility. And the greatest strength any species can have is knowing the difference. The elder species had learned a hard lesson. They had boasted of their superiority for millions of years, dismissing younger species as primitive and worthless. But when the galaxy faced its greatest threat, it was the primitive humans who found the solution. Morrison's sacrifice had shown them what true power felt like. It wasn't about dominating others or proving superiority. It was about bearing impossible burdens so others could live. It was about making choices that would haunt you forever because someone had to make them. The galaxy was safe, but it would never be the same. Humanity had taken their place not as rulers, but as guardians. The species willing to stand watch against the darkness so others could sleep peacefully. And in the depths of space, the silence waited, planning for its next attempt. But now, it faced a galaxy that understood the true meaning of power and was ready to pay any price to protect what mattered most.